difference. You go into the gym and you do 3 sets of 10
Right.
of every exercise to try and get as strong as you possibly can. Well, we had people come in from Japan to do the ultrasound, and they measured muscle thickness too. So this whole study was about muscle hypertrophy and muscle strength. You know, those are both pretty well correlated. Yes. The bigger the muscle, the stronger it is, usually, always. But we found in the end, and I was fortunate enough to be lead author on that, and that there wasn't any difference. There was no statistical difference between doing 3 sets of 10 and 1 set to failure. But there has to be failure. You can't be, you know, slacking off. It's failure.
Right.
I can't get that last one.
Right.
You know, okay.
Yeah.
1 set like that was as good as 3 to 10. That cuts your time.
That makes sense.
Down by 2/3.
And we're live today on the Imagine Fitting In podcast with, always I consider all my guests are special people to have in front of me. And I'm going to welcome Dr. David Starkey. Welcome, David.
Well, thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it. It's nice to be able to see you again.
And David, nice. Exactly. It was a pleasure meeting you the other day, and our good friend Larry Pacifico hooked us up. We'll chat a little bit about that. But David, I like to usually start about, the podcast is all about mentors, healthy living, and community. And I realize you were in Ohio. I guess, or were you born a Buckeye?
Yes, I was. Troy, Ohio, Downer Hospital.
All right.
1953. It's hard to believe. I'm sitting right back in that hospital right now.
Really? So why don't you tell me? Okay. Oh, awesome. Tell me where you were born, where you call home today, and tell me a little bit about your parents, your family, their careers and stuff.
Well, I was born in Troy, Ohio, at Stouter Hospital in 1953, November 27th. I was the son of a man that started working for Hobart Manufacturing, and a mother that came from a small town up where Dean Martin was born.
Okay. What town?
We left
after
a while.
Do you remember Dean Martin?
Did you know who Dean Martin was?
Okay.
The singer?
Absolutely.
Don't tell me you don't know.
Absolutely.
Don't tell me you don't know.
No, I know him. He's a crooner. Oh, yeah. I wanted to be him. Remember Matt Helm?
I remember the name Matt Helm. Wasn't he a cowboy?
No, Matt Helm, I believe, was the name of Dean Martin when he played like a James Bond type of guy in his movies.
Oh, okay. It's a movie. Okay, yeah, a movie character.
Yeah, you got, right? Now you got me. So what did your parents do, David?
Excuse me. Say what?
Yeah, I said, so your dad worked for Hobart, and did your mom work, or was she just mother at home? And how was that growing up? Did you have siblings?
Back then the man provided, and the woman took care of the house and the children. So she ended up with 4 kids to take care of, as he had ended up having to pay for it. And he did a hell of a job for a long time.
Okay, very good. Did you have siblings? Do you have any siblings?
Do I have siblings? Yes. Yes, I have an older brother and a younger brother and a younger sister.
Nice. And you mentioned something about your mom. Tell me about, again, I didn't mean to interrupt. What were you mentioning about your mom?
Just that she was very meticulous in taking care of the house. Yeah, and the children, right? I would walk home from grade school.
She was on point.
Yes, she was. I would walk home from grade school at the end of my block, Haywood School. I understand they're going to tear Haywood School down, and I hate to see that happen. I just hate to see that because there's so many memories encased in that big old school. But there's some politics involved that I haven't really researched. Anyway, I'd come home from there. I'd have like 35 minutes for lunch. I'd walk home. She'd give me soup, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'd walk back to school.
Oh, that's fantastic. You were able to take a break and go see mom and get some food at home. That's great.
I remember when I went home and she was crying one year, and I said, "What's wrong?" That was the year Kennedy died, and she had heard that Kennedy was assassinated, and that's my first memory of that. I don't even know, 1964. I was 10 years old.
No, it was November 22nd, 1963. I remember that because I was born in I was born in January of 63. So I was about 2 months old, 2 months exactly when he got, no, I'm sorry, take it back. I was 11 months old because I was born about 10 months old. So I was born in 63 on the 22nd. But David, tell me a little bit about like what your experiences or individuals have most profoundly shaped your personal values and your philosophy. Is that your parents, or how do you think your personal values and your life philosophy formed?
Well, I'm sure that it was my parents in great part. Well, there was a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things, right? So you did things the right way. Well, I used to not sass, but maybe resist my dad. My older brother, you couldn't do that. So I learned by the discipline my father gave to him to avoid that. But
Right.
every once in a while, I pushed the line a little bit, and my dad would say, "You're breathing a scab on the end of your nose."
Uh-oh.
And I go, "What the hell is he talking about? What the heck is he talking about?"
Hint,
But
hint.
I knew it was threatening.
Listen, David. So, David, were you a middle child?
Well, I
Were you
was
what,
the
the
second
second
oldest.
oldest, or?
The second oldest. I don't
Got
know.
it.
I suppose I shared,
Okay.
being in the middle with
Right.
everybody was separated by about 2.5 years.
Got it. And so, do you have, let me ask you, David, I asked everybody this. And number one, before I ask you this question, um, we see a doctor here. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, and I believe you're a doctor of chiropractic. So tell us a little bit about where you hang your hat today and what keeps you busy these days.
Well, I'm hanging my hat in kind of a rehab situation. I just went through,
Okay.
in March, I had all my teeth taken out, right?
Oh goodness.
Because of lousy teeth. That's one thing. If anybody's listening right now, you need to learn to take care of your teeth. I used to see people that say, "Oh, well, I floss twice a day and I brush twice a day," and I thought, "Oh, what a bunch
Right.
of work," you know. But I guarantee you, it's worth it,
Right.
because you don't
Yeah.
want to be my age and lose all your teeth, because it's not the same thing having
Right.
those falls.
Yeah.
So take care of your teeth. And then in the next month, I
Okay.
had my
Good
hip
lesson.
replaced. My left hip was replaced in
Oh, good.
April. And then in March,
Okay.
I had cataract surgery. So right now, it's sort of a
Okay.
rehab session. I'm doing some things online with the Pro
Okay.
Football Association. It's a nutrition thing right now and a wound care thing.
Okay.
But I really don't know that much
Okay.
about it right now. I'm sort of researching that. You asked
Okay.
what
Let
I'm
me
doing?
ask you.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, okay, so how long were you are you retired from being the chiropractor? Or tell us a little about your chiropractic days and how you got to be a chiropractor.
Well, I went to college at the University of Florida, and I got into trouble, and I ended up leaving, right? And but I was kind of a noise for a year or so, but I ended up going back to school, and I worked on getting my bachelor's, and then I got my master's degree, and then I was sort of like
Nice.
wondering what to do next, and I was thinking about being a physical therapist, but I was running a research program, which, by the way, got published in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise. But he told me, he says,
Tell
"Hey,
us about that.
let me
Tell us about that.
What, the study?"
Yes, please. Tell me a little bit of background about that. That sounds fascinating.
Well, that was a study to compare 3 sets of 10 of heavy. I was in exercise physiology, right? So what gave more muscle, right? 3 sets of 10 or 1 set to failure between 8 and 10. Okay? So the difference, you go into the gym and you do 3 sets of 10 of every exercise to try and get as strong as you possibly can. Well, we had people come in from Japan to do the ultrasound, and they measured muscle thickness too. So this whole study was about muscle hypertrophy and muscle strength. Those are both pretty well correlated. The bigger the muscle, the stronger it is, usually, always. But we found in the end, and I was fortunate enough to be lead author on that, and that there wasn't any difference. There was no statistical difference between doing 3 sets of 10 and 1 set to failure. But there has to be failure. You can't be, slacking off. It's failure.
Right.
I can't get that last one.
Right.
you know, okay. One
Yeah,
set like that was as good as 3 to 10. That cuts your
that makes
time
sense.
down by 2/3.
Right. That makes sense because the energy requirement to do less of a weight and do those 3 sets to end up being failure, that totally makes sense. But so let me ask you, I mean, that sounds like at that time, do you remember when that was at that, what year was that study? It sounds, I bet it was like really cutting edge back in the day, right? What year was that? Do you remember?
I think it was around 2000, 99 or 2000, somewhere around there. But it's in medicine and science and sports and exercise. You can look it up, David Starkey, strength and hypertrophy of the quadriceps and hamstring muscles. And, it's published,
Nice,
which was cool,
nice. Yeah,
And I certainly couldn't have done it without
yeah.
Michael Pollack and all the other people that helped me. I got to,
Nice, nice.
point people in the right direction, but there were people pointing me, so I was working on a master's degree, master's of science. So that was pretty cool.
Nice collab.
Didn't want to
Nice.
go
A
to
nice
PhD
collaboration.
Pardon?
Okay. I mentioned that you did a nice collaboration, and I have to make a comment about you. You said you didn't really want to do a PhD because I had an instructor one time. This is actually in advertising and art, and he described PhD was like, yeah, it can potentially be piled high and deep of
My
the
interest
amount of
was the
stuff that
fact
you
that I
go
talked
into.
to, yeah. I talked to some of the other students that were doing the PhD right and had already done the PhD right.
Yes.
Even the guys that were high
Yeah.
up. And the higher ups, they don't make their money from doing the school. They make their money from expert witnessing.
There
Couple
you
hundred,
go.
$300 an
That makes
hour or
sense.
something like that, just or 1,000.
Sure.
And I talked to a couple of the kids that were going to go on for their PhD, and they were talking about $25,000 a year to start out. And I thought to myself, well,
Hey, David.
What?
Back then that's a lot of money. But did you have? I'm just gonna backtrack just a speck here. Did you have any memories? Do you ever remember? I always like to ask my guests this. Do you have any memories about when you wanted to be as a kid? Any dreams, childhood dreams at all?
No.
Not really. So you
I've
got
always been
into
a
school.
creature of reaction, and I never really. I mean, when I found out that football could get me a scholarship and get me out of school, I liked playing football, but I didn't have any dreams, so to speak. I figured I'd go play pro football and I'd make a lot of money. But I don't know if you call that a dream. My dream is to see Jesus.
What is that, today's dream or
Nah,
your whole life dream?
That's the ultimate dream. Hey, dude, why'd you put me through this? Why did I do this? Can you tell me why I had to do this? I mean, if you're leading the way, how come I had to go this way? Yeah.
Well,
I just want to talk
sometimes
to him.
I think
say thanks for what he did.
Hey, listen. So, did you ever have a significant moment when something, an event or some kind of, interaction with somebody that really changed your life in terms of your career? How'd you get convinced that you wanted to go into be a chiropractor? That'd be interesting. How'd that happen?
Some guy, this study that I was running, that we got off on the sidebar to, some guy was working in that study with me, and he says, well, why do you want to be a physical therapist? You can be a chiropractor and be a primary care physician. A physical therapist most often has to have somebody refer them their patient. And they'd work things out with MDs to have a blanket referral here and there, but that's essentially why. And I always did, when I was a little boy, I used to sneak up behind my brother while he's sitting in the chair, and I'd reach over and I'd grab his neck and I'd crack his neck.
Wait, when you knew what you were doing?
I wasn't doing chiropractic, but I was just a natural.
So listen, what did you find? You mentioned football. To what degree did you participate during when you're younger, or did you actually play high school or even college or anything like that?
I played some Little League. I think just 1 year Little League, and some big old guy drove his elbow through my solar plexus. I was laid up for 3 days. So I didn't go back
So
out.
you were
Let me tell you, this is a pretty good story. I didn't go back out until 8th grade, right? I mean, I went over to play
okay.
with my friends, right? You know, like you do. You
Yes.
go over to
Street
Ian's
ball?
house or you go over to Bob's house. And so I went over and everybody was practicing football, but nobody
Yeah.
told me about it. And I think that was 7th grade because I went out in 8th grade and, you know, we had a group that's really got together in 8th grade and went all the way through high school. I mean, somebody just told me
Oh,
that
nice.
we were called the best football team that Ohio has had in this area for
So what year?
50
What
years or
year?
so.
No. So now, did you play? Did you play in? You played in high school. What high school did you play for?
Troy,
Troy. Okay, sure. And what year was your senior year? Do you remember?
1972.
Oh my goodness. So all the okay. So am I right when like was it like a Roger Staubach or was Joe Namath still around or no? Was he still
Well,
around, Joe Namath?
Joe Namath was playing Pro Bowl.
Right, but I'm saying was he popular at the time you guys were playing high school? Is there any Pro Bowl players that you guys looked up to or admired
I used to like watching a guy by the
back in that
name
day?
the Marshall, Minnesota Vikings. They were called the Purple People Eaters. The purple because their uniform was
Okay.
purple, and the People Eaters because they were fierce.
Right.
And they were sport. I used to like watching those guys.
Right. Wasn't there there was a really big lineman on that Minnesota team that was known, right? They were. I remember I'm old enough to remember that they were just kind of notoriously fierce. But so now let me ask you, so you played football with your buddies and then you end up going to college and then you end up like now was there a period of time when before we when we first met you were telling me some boxing stories. So what's that timing? Where's the boxing fit in? Because that's super interesting to me.
My interest came because my dad had a pair of boxing gloves, right? And he used to tell stories about that's how his
Okay.
father made him and his older brothers settle their arguments. But there was only one pair of boxing gloves. But that, that's gave me an interest. But I didn't do anything to it until late in college. When I was
Okay.
actually taking the leave from college and I was doing some stuff, there was this guy called Jim Forsman in Gainesville, Florida, that had a clothing store, but he also had other real estate around the town. And one of them was a venue where, Edgar Winter played and that sort of stuff. So I went into his clothing shop one day.
Nice.
All right. So I go into the clothing shop.
Yeah.
And he says he's putting on a fight over at the Great Southern Music Hall. And I said, well, what do I get? And he says, I'll give you any suit you want in here. And they had some suits worth $450, $500.
Nice.
Right? So I thought to myself, it's a deal.
And you're like, hell yeah.
And that was my first fight. I lost. It was a decision.
And
it was an amateur fight.
Okay. And so had you been like shadow boxing and practicing, or do you just go right in and say, I'm going to try this and train? You're in terms of training before you did your first fight?
The suit was the incentive. The $450 black suit was the incentive. Fight who? I don't care.
So
Let's go.
You walked in there with no really formal training and just went at it?
Yeah. I mean, I had, there was a guy in Troy named Carl Carter. Now, Carl Carter had a reputation for being a tough guy, right? So I asked Carl to teach me how to box because he knew how to box, right? So we go to my house down in the basement, which was the playroom, and I had that one pair of gloves that my dad owned. I gave him one glove, and I was putting on the other glove, and he hit me upside the head, knocked me back into my sister's toy chest, and I slid across the room. So that was my first and only lesson in boxing. Oh
my gosh, he sucker punched you.
Yeah, but that was a good lesson. Don't you think that was a good lesson? Don't let somebody get close enough to sucker punch you.
Hey, David. So tell me, okay, so now this is very interesting. So you're in Florida. So did you get your suit?
Yeah, I had it for years. I gave it to my son.
Nice.
His mother
so
gave it
okay,
back.
so tell me, okay. So you're in Florida, you're doing this fight, one of your first fights. And how'd you get to Florida? And then where did the any more boxing experience in your life? Because you share with me, off camera that you had some colorful moments in what we call as U.S. boxing history, basically. So tell me, how did you get to Florida? And after that first fight, where'd that go after that?
I had a full football scholarship to the University of Florida. So that's why I went to Florida.
Nice.
So I went down there to play football. And this happened to be one of the several times that I stepped away from playing football and did other things. And
okay,
that's where that first fight came up. And then after that, different things, would present themselves, and I'd drift in and out of town. I got a chance to go to the Fifth Street Gym in Miami, Florida, on Collins Avenue, where Muhammad Ali trained.
Okay.
But
and what year was this?
I did that. I was unemployed and broke and walking on the side of the street. And this guy that I knew that, trained boxers stopped and yelled over, "Hey, Starkey," he says, "you want to fight?" And I was dead broke. So I says, "Well, yeah, how much?" And he said, $200. And I says, "Yeah, sure. When? And he said, "Right now, jump in the back of the van." So I went down there. I went down to Tampa, might have been Tarpon Springs, fought a guy that they were trying to build up named Kenny Austin. He was 6'9" basketball player from California. So I went in, and actually I was dealing with Angelo Dundee's brother, Chris. Chris was putting on this fight. And
got it.
Chris pulled me into his office and told me that he would give me $200 more if I did not knock out Kenny Austin. They were trying to build him up. You build a fighter's record up so he can fight a better fighter. Okay? So I needed money. I needed money. So I said, sure. And so I went in and I just covered up, stayed away and covered up. And it was over in 4 rounds, right? And he won. So I didn't knock him out.
Got it.
I had $200 coming. So I go in there and talk to Chris Dundee, and he said he wasn't going to give them to me. And of course I wanted it, so I had to beg to differ with him and argue a little bit. He had some guy, I probably shouldn't say this, they might still send somebody after me. But Chris had an enforcer sitting on the couch behind him. And I just told Chris, I said, look, we made a deal, and I'm not leaving until I get it, I mean, I was polite but firm, right? And this guy stands up, I thought, oh, shit, now I got to fight again. And Chris said, no, sit down. He gave me the other $200. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I get this phone call, right? From the guy that got me the fight, because I didn't have a telephone, right? That's back when you could live without a telephone, right? But he said, hey, they want you to come down to Miami Beach and be a sparring partner for this guy I didn't knock out. And that led to all sorts of stuff. I got to meet Muhammad Ali. I got to see Muhammad Ali get his lips split wide open by an ex-con named Jeff Sim, who's probably still fighting 60 years.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. Am I getting a little rambunctious for you?
So tell, no, not at all. You got it now. Since you mentioned Ali and split lip and whatever, tell us about that story, because I think my guests would be interested in hearing a Muhammad Ali story.
This is
how'd that happen?
The Fifth Street Gym in Miami Beach on Collins Avenue, right there, a couple hundred feet from the beach, a couple hundred yards from the beach. But anyway, that's where Ali trained. And it was when he was a star, Angelo Dundee had him in there training, and it's a dump. Forgive me, the Dundees. I don't mean to. Somebody else bought the place so that it wouldn't be destroyed. I mean, floors were crooked, and the bags were ripped, and taped up. Anyway, I was in there working out, and all of a sudden, a great big ruckus, coming up the stairs. I look down the stairs. Here comes Muhammad Ali, and he had, which I would have to say would be, 6 or 7 hangers on. You know how hangers on are. There's they were just hangers on.
Right.
So he came in, and
we would call to Today we'd call them his posse.
Posse? Okay, all right. The posse he pays for, I'm sure. But he came up there and he sparred. He was doing some sparring, right? If you think about one of my regrets would be is that I did not spar Ali. But two guys that I did sparred Ali. One was a guy from Argentina. We did a Ford commercial together. And then there was the other guy was Jeff Sims. Now, Jeff was an ex-con. He used a shotgun for something. And he was in the gym all the time. And he was one of those kind of guys that had an attitude where he was always pushing you, seeing how far he could push you. So I almost had a confrontation with him a couple of times. But I did. He was sparring Ali, right? So he gets in there sparring Ali, and Ali takes his mouth guard out. Now I'm 3 feet away from him, right? And Ali takes his mouth guard out, and he starts talking trash to Sims.
Wow. Just a little break here. Another great episode. I hope you are enjoying Imagine Fitting In podcast. And just a reminder here, please remember to hit the subscribe button because we love to feel you a part of our Imagine Fitting In family. And if you want to become a brand ambassador, we'd love it if you would share this link on social media, through your email, all your friends. You can help with us with donations, any small donation, big or large, whatever you can manage, to help encourage us and support our efforts here. And you'll find that link in the show notes. And finally, again, a reminder, please refer guests to us. You can find me and contact me at TheBalanceProfessor@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. All right. So I hope you continue enjoying Imagine Fitting In. All right. Till next time.
But this is exactly what Ali said. He looked at Jeff Sims and he says, you know, Sims, he says, you ain't. Sims flipped out, man. He ducked his head straight down, threw this over the hand right, way up high, coming down, hit Ali in the lip, split it wide open because he didn't have his mouth guard in. He was talking trash, right? And if you look back in the history books, you'll see where Ali grew a mustache after that. Until, of course, he could get it healed up. And, of course, he has enough money to make it imperceptible later on. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The thing is, 15 years later, I think it was about that, might have been that much, I was graduating from chiropractic school, and I walked into my house, and on the TV, I see this guy dragging his right leg back, right? He was going around the ring boxing, and he was dragging his right leg, you know? And then I heard the announcer say, and Jeff Sims, and I looked at him, here's Sims, 15 years later after I went back and got my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate, Sims is still out there fighting for $300 or $400. And that's the way most of those guys are.
Wow.
Most of the guys are fighting for just enough to keep their, some food on the table. Yeah.
Sure.
It
was such a, back in the day, because it was such such a mighty platform to, have radio and then television broadcast this idea of, the strongest, most cunning fighter, right, in the world, heavyweight champion. You could see that obviously there were a lot of dreams and aspirations of people to, that what were required to try to create that whole entity of what we know as the Boxing Association. And I grew up, my biggest memory is definitely Ali and how him and Frazier's trilogy, that was the peak of my, my introduction to that, and the Thriller in Manila, which was like amazing. But I could see how there's have to be a lot of people put this stuff on. And unfortunately, it got to a point where now we're in modern day. And I'm not sure if you are familiar much about with mixed martial arts, but there's a big push toward just that clarity and all the promotions. And really what really separates these modern day MMA fighters, David, is that these major promoters, especially I'll give a shout out to Dana White of the UFC, is that they really take care of their fighters. And so for years, obviously, there's a lot of promoters trying to set up fights and take the cash. And we heard stories about good fighters losing their money to their managers. But that being said, it's like, it goes back to like everybody potentially has a dream and says, where do I fit in? Where can I make an attempt? So you see Ali get his lip busted, and you mentioned, you said he literally started, like when he was out in public, he grew a mustache to try to cover it up. I can see why that goes on. About what year was that? You remember?
Pardon me? Say that again.
About what year? Yeah, about what year was that? Was that when he was coming back to
years? In the 80s, I suppose. Maybe before that. Because I think it was before I fought Buster Douglas, right? It's before I fought Carl Williams.
Okay.
Those guys both became heavyweight champions. So maybe it was the late 70s. Whenever,
So
I don't know.
This was
wait a second.
Probably just after.
I can't figure it out. I'd have to have a pen and a paper. It might have been in the 70s.
It's probably just at. Was it probably just after all the trilogy with Frazier? Yeah, that was after the trilogy with Frazier for sure.
Oh yeah, because he was not.
So tell us,
he was not a contender at that time. He was just kicking around when Ali got his lip split.
Right. So tell us about Buster Douglas. So what was that like? You sparred with him, or you actually fought in a fight with him?
Buster and I fought in Columbus. And I think that was in 84.
Really?
Thereabouts.
Okay.
He hit me when I was down, and I got pissed off and rumbled around and, knocked the referee down, walked over him, grabbed Douglas. Well, I tried to kick Douglas, right? I was going to try and kick him in the chest, but we have these groin guards on that are big leather things, and it made it so I couldn't lift my thigh, right? So if you can't lift your thigh to get it into chamber, you can't kick high, right? So I ended up kicking him in the thigh, right? His eyes got huge.
You're in the ring, and you're in an organized fight in Columbus, and your temper got the better of you, and you actually kicked him during the fight?
Well, see, you left out the important part. He knocked me down with that uppercut he knocked Tyson out with, right? Where he stepped to the side and came up with that uppercut.
Really?
And came across. Well, he knocked me down with that. That's the same one that he knocked Tyson out with. So I was down on one knee.
Wow.
And he goes, bam.
Got it.
Bam, bam. So I got up, and the referee saw me coming, and I knocked the ref down and stepped over him and went for Douglas. Douglas's eyes got big, and he stepped back. And I went to kick him in the chest, right? I went to kick him in the chest, but I ended up hitting him in the thigh. And then he comes off the ropes because he used to wrestle. He tried to tackle me, but I used to wrestle. I was like an all-state wrestler. I competed. I downhooked that one arm that he was, trying to tackle me with, and I threw this arm up like this as we were flying through the air, and I ended up on top. And I was just pounding away at him, and then we had gloves on. You couldn't hurt him. And both sides came out, and they pulled us apart. The crowd was going wild. I mean, they were screaming and yelling. And then,
oh my God.
They were. And then they wouldn't let us fight, wouldn't let us continue. And the crowd changed.
Yeah.
I'm going to get after her, and everybody's all pissed off. So I snuck out the side door and got the hell out of there.
Did the crowd want you guys to continue to kind of square up and fight and find out who won legit, or it was just so much mayhem that they had to just kind of get you guys out of the ring?
I think the crowd obviously wanted us to continue. No doubt about that. The crowd wanted to see a friggin' fight. And I'm sure the guys that were putting on the fight, well, it could have been, they were promoting Douglas. Douglas was going to be heavyweight champion of the world. That was decided.
Yeah.
Right? And they were bringing him along with the money. And he could fight. He was a good fighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so they didn't want to continue. They tried.
Yeah.
I'm sure they tried not to let it go down in the record books as a tie, because that would besmirch their record. But I think it
Yeah.
did go down as a tie. I think in one book, it said a double disqualification. I'd like to tell him I'm sorry.
Got it.
I really didn't, but he didn't need to hit me when I was down. You know, that's wrong. That's
Right. Well,
absolutely wrong. That disqualified him for
right.
hitting me when I was down, and me
Chances
for
are-
unsportsmanlike conduct.
Chances are, David, I'm assuming that you might have been. I'm guessing that maybe you were kind of getting the better of him. Did you ever trash talk, or you just were going at him, and maybe he felt so intimidated that, like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be able to. This guy's
I was scared. I'm telling you. Remember those old movies that we used to watch when we were kids? And it was a stereotype, of course. They'd take the black people that are getting scared and their eyes would get big and white, right?
Right.
Well, that was Buster's eyes. It was just huge. Yeah, I'm sure he would have kicked my ass, eventually. But
yeah,
so especially, I mean, if we fought by the rules.
Yeah. All right, let's pause for a second,
I want you to
David.
get this aired over Columbus, because I'd like to see Buster. Buster. I'd like to tell him I'm sorry for that. I really would, but I'm glad I did it.
Okay. Well, yeah, because obviously
I messed up his career, but he went on to become heavyweight champion.
Right.
He beat Tyson for the heavyweight championship.
Right. So, how do you feel that you said you mentioned that you messed up his career in terms of how? Like, because was it a disqualification? So it was a tie?
But it's a black mark on his career.
Got it.
I'd like to go apologize for it.
So
I really would.
Tell me,
Buster, I'm sorry.
Well, that's honor. Well, that's honorable. Obviously, I'm sure that, as you mentioned earlier in the episode about, you'd like to talk to Jesus. Maybe you can have a conversation. There would be something that you would to kind of appease, that conversation.
I think Buster and I should have a rematch. I'm 71 now. He's got to be 70. Do you think we could make any money at that?
So
we need a promoter.
I can't even go there, buddy.
I can use 50 grand.
Is there, there you go. let me ask you, this podcast, being about, obviously life can be hard and there's challenges and there's ups and downs, peaks and valleys. So, as the podcast, I try to highlight the importance of mentors and that we all have had our journeys. And I like to think that to share the stories of how, some of us have tripped along into certain opportunities and gathered information and gathered experiences. So in your life, is there anything particular that you would have done differently in your life to prepare yourself for your future? Or how did, with your chiropractic, your practice, and did that end up being, I'm assuming it's kind of like during or after your boxing days, did that kind of fill your avenue for how many years were you a chiropractor?
I'm still a chiropractor. 25 years.
Okay.
I think what if I was going to talk about what I would have done different and could have done different, would be that there's a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There's another one called The Richest Man in Babylon. Yeah? And I would read that early, and I would start trying to achieve goals. Set goals for yourself. Okay, I mean, I want to be a pro football player. Okay, I want to learn how to play the piano too. I mean, I want to learn how to dance, to set goals and then take time out of your day to try and achieve each one of those goals. That's what I would do different. I never was able to do that, even though I was exposed to it. I've always just reacted. Situations would present themselves and I would go that way. That's what I would do different. Right. I would have a goal. The people that I know that had those goals in life are very comfortable today and secure in their future, apart from health, of course. But that's another goal. You need to keep your teeth, so you need to brush your teeth.
Right.
You need to watch your diet, so your body is, because your body is made up of what you eat. Period.
Right.
What you eat and breathe, that's what your body is made up
obviously.
of. You have cells that die every day. and they have to be replaced. So they get replaced with Twinkies or monosodium glutamate or what. So take care of your body, because you're going to
so yeah, it's you
set health goals
you
and
are what you
financial
eat.
goals.
Exactly. So yeah, you know, my particular journey, and I think I mentioned this to you when we had first met, that, you know, and I've mentioned this on my episode before. I used to be in advertising. In my essence, I was an artist, and I've been using my creative energies all my fitness career to help propel my love of fitness and taking care of the body. And my moniker is the Balance Professor. So yeah, I completely understand that. But there's something that's I really admire with your story, David, is that there are, like you said, there's certain planning and goals. And then when you seize opportunities at any given time in our lives, right? It's almost like you said, that timing where you would step into a situation like, okay, let me check that out. And there is a sense of curiosity. And I think you're correct. It's like a delicate balance of being able to have a framework foundation to start with. And of course, if you're going to try to last a long time, we have to be aware of our physical wellness, and keeping both our minds and our bodies sharp, because they're basically one the same. I would sure you agree. So what is it that's really helped you to endure the hardships that have been presented in your life, being so, what do you call it, so adventurous? Because you're touching a base on and touching a really special place in my heart, David, because that adventurous outlook and be open to what life has to bring is a huge factor that I've been living hard all my life with. And tell me again, what has helped you endure these after hardships that's been presented in your life? What have you found that has helped kind of support and guide you through to where you are today?
Well, I just have to tell you, God sends me people, right? I go through hardships and trouble. God sends me people. Sometimes they're human, and sometimes they're angels. How's that for a grabber? I was going to kill myself one time, and I hope we have enough time for me to tell this real quick. But I was going to kill myself one time, and I was walking.
No, don't.
I was walking to a
we
have
health plenty club. Of time.
I was walking to a health club.
Yep.
Where I had worked. And while I was working the day before, I found syringes, right? When I was cleaning up. And I had been reading a book that said if you wanted to kill yourself, you could just inject yourself with air and it'd give you a stroke and you'd die. So I thought to myself, well, I'll do that. And then I'll because it won't happen right away, I'll throw the needle away and they'll say, well, he just died. He had a heart attack, right? I'm walking along. Now, I get emotional sometimes when I tell this, so if I start weeping or something, please bear with me. But I'm walking by a park next to a main road. There's nobody in front of me for 30 yards except a big tree and nobody behind me. So I'm walking, and that's my plan. I'm going up there to kill myself. All of a sudden, there's a guy standing in front of me, a normal-looking guy, and probably 20s to 30, 20 to 5, 20, 25, and he's standing there, right? So he starts talking to me. This is where it happens. And he starts talking to me and telling me that God has a purpose for me, right? And, he talked along those lines for, several moments, and I was not as hospitable as I should have been. And I told him, I said, look, if you feel that way, you should be a preacher, And then I turned to leave, right? And I took 2 steps, but I thought to myself, that was rude. I need to apologize. I took 2 steps, and I turned around to tell him I was sorry for snapping at him, right? And he was gone.
That quick.
He was an angel. But I got it to the health club, and I had this in a hiding place that Houdini couldn't find, right? And I went to get them, and they were gone. And I guess that kind of deterred me. But I'd have to say that was
another angel.
I wouldn't have fought in Madison Square Garden. I wouldn't have gotten married. I wouldn't have had children. I wouldn't have graduated college. I wouldn't have become a chiropractor. I wouldn't have been able to help anybody that I may have possibly helped along that road if I would have been successful in killing myself back then. So you never know what God's going to put in front of you. And it ain't always easy. You don't understand.
Right, exactly.
But you got to put your faith in God, because there's no place in this Bible that says anything about Worry about your finances. Worry about, your family life. Worry about this. Worry about that. It says trust in God. And that's the secret. That's the key. I'd love to create a hypnosis thing to increase people's faith. Because if you have faith, you can do anything. But we all have that doubt, even though we don't admit to it. I don't admit to it. I must have the doubt. When my wife died of cancer, I couldn't heal it. I must not have had enough faith. So if we could build the faith up, somehow build that faith up. And I think hypnosis might be a key to do that. And I think it would change lots of people's lives. Mine, for one. I'd like to try it.
Yeah. That's a
So
very honorable intention, and that's
mentors. I've had buddies, Joe Cerulli out of Gainesville, Florida. He's always been there for me. I have so many friends: Robbie Moore, Glenn Seaver, all these guys. Sensei Bonsteel. He's an 8th degree black belt in karate, right? And he was there for me. I went through some recent emotional trauma. But he got Guillain-Barré syndrome. I was with him, and one day he was fine. The next day he was paralyzed. This is an 8th degree black belt in karate that moves like that. And he couldn't lift his arm. And he's rehabbing right now. But can you imagine what a turn that would be, wouldn't it? Okay, I can't get out. He couldn't get out of bed. Can you imagine that? Just overnight.
And these were he and all the people you mentioned, were those guys from childhood, or met along the way in your life?
Met along the way in my life. A great inspiration for me was a guy I used to look up to. His name was Bud Allen. Now, I used to look up to him because he had the slick black blonde hair, the leather jacket, and the girl on his arm, right? And he was like 6 years older than me. Right? Well, when he was 33, he got pulled into a swimming pool and he got paralyzed. And he was a quadriplegic for 33 years. Those guys usually last 4 to 8 years. Now, he was a quadriplegic for 33 years. And he still inspired me. I used to go over there to have him cheer me up.
I'm sorry. What happened to him?
He got pulled into a swimming pool and he hit the back of his head on the bottom of the pool.
Oh, goodness. Oh, wow. God bless. God bless.
Yeah.
David, I want to thank you for your time and your honest emotion and energy. It's a powerful statement that I know it's going to hit veins of encouragement and pumping almost like a survival rate in a hearing the hard knocks and the adventures. It's just a kind of definitely an adventure story. And I think in terms of your journey of getting that close to wanting to kind of step away, and then finding what you called that angel at any given time, that awareness, it's beautiful. And so what is your focus? And you're older, and obviously you mentioned a hip replacement. And what is it that are you going to continue and look more into research in terms of that hypnosis stuff, or do you have any other projects that you're doing? What keeps you busy these days besides your rehab?
Well, yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to develop some sort of a hypnosis thing to even self-hypnotize myself to increase my faith. There's a friend of mine here in town that has a soup kitchen. It's called the St. Patrick Soup Kitchen. And he also has a place that helps put people up that need a place to stay at St. Joseph's House here in Troy. I would like to help him with that. Something that I wanted to do. Also, there's, some other things. There's some legal things to do with real estate that I'd like to work on a little bit more. So there's lots for me to do, but the main thing is to get myself moving again. I mean, I used to be an athlete, and now I'm sort of just trying to get in shape so I can try and get in shape.
Right. Well, I'm sure Larry maybe mentioned this, but you're kind of talking about your hip replacements. It's sort of like my specialty. I do a lot of pre-surgical conditioning for situations and post-rehab fitness strategy. So I want to just say this out right on the episode. Love to have you come down and visit at my studio and see if I can give you any powerful pointers to support your effort. I really thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure to have you share your story there. And, my podcast, I like to think that I'm bringing the world to Ohio and Ohio to the world. So it's very nice that we could hear you stand out, Troy, up there, and that Hobart Arena. And I still, it makes me think about my late mother, God bless her. She mentioned how I think that Hobart Arena was the place to go back in the day, and it was like a really, what do you call it? A treasure in Troy when, like you're talking about getting out to community and helping your friend. And I think that, one of the main reasons, for this podcast and for us talking is to, even though we're doing this virtually, is to obviously socially engage, share our stories on somewhat, right? And thank you, on a deeper, sometimes emotional level. It's sometimes uncomfortable, but I think it's almost, it's necessary for us as a community, as a people, obviously, right? To get involved and keep a strong social network. And so I thank you for your time spent today. And, again, that invite is open to you. We can talk more off camera, in terms of you come to my studio, if I give you any tips or pointers on my experience. And that being said, would you like to, obviously we have to do a final shout out to Larry Pacifico. So thank you, Larry, for introducing me to Mr. Starkey, David. And David, would you like to share anything with the audience? Any kind of final comments about, how you think that in terms of a message could be simple but a powerful statement for people of all ages, young or old, to inspire them on continue their journey?
Well, I'll tell you what, my dad was flying one time and he was sitting in the airplane and a pro football player from the Green Bay Packers. I had a book by him that he signed, but I forgot what his name. He said he gave Dad the book and he wrote down on it. And I guess my dad told him the history of me playing football. And he said, make the effort. It's worth it.
That is a great nugget. Make the effort. It's worth it. Wow, that's a piece of treasure, David, that will be here on your episode. And I thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for having me.
Make the effort, it's worth it.
It's been fun.
Fantastic. Hey, listen, it's been a real pleasure. I hoped, as I mentioned with Larry, and we broke some bread the other day. We'll have to do that again sometime soon, sir. And you take care of yourself, stay busy, engaged, and you have my number, and I'll be in touch, my friend.
We got to give Larry thanks. He trained me when I was 17 and 18. He gave me a boost up to achieve a little bit more athletically.
Again, big shout out to Larry Pacifico. All right, David. So we'll talk to you again soon. All right. You take care, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye, Greg. Thank you.
All right, all right. Bye-bye. It's been a pleasure. All right, everybody. Okay, kids. Till next time. Bye-bye.